Hi everyone, the course code is BEGC-134. Assignment of July 2023 and January 2024 session. This paper contains maximum marks of 100. You should answer all the questions. It contains two sections, Section A and Section B. Section A contains 4 questions which contains 5 marks of each, that is equal to 20 marks of Section A, and Section B contains 80 marks, 20 marks of each. Okay, now the first question is write short notes in about 100 words each. Style. It is a common place to state that all literary artists, even novelists, must operate within the bounds of a certain language. A good novelist always aims to improve the language they choose to use. The way in which language is utilized or handled is what to some extent separates a good author from a mediocre one. In a sense, language is the greatest resource a novelist or writer has at their disposal. The ability of a novelist to use language as an effective and inventive tool for narrative and or the expression of his/her thoughts is a key component of style, which is fundamentally a linguistic characteristic. The writing style of one writer would definitely differ from that of the other because each author is likely to employ language differently or in his or her own distinctive fashion. Similar to how your choice of clothing may be considered to carry an imprint of your imagination or lack thereof or neglect your personality. Style is a distinguishing signature of an author and an indication of his or her creative genius. Given the wide range of available styles, we would like to argue that categorization is not possible or desirable. 3 main subcategories of style would also be established: high grade, middle mean, and low base plane. Northrop Frye invented a new distinction of style that he based on whether a literary work makes use of expression and rhythms of ordinary speech or instead makes use of formal devices and elaborates in order to differentiate its language from the quotidian. These two contrasts are known as the demotic and the hieratic respectively. However, he also distinguished a high, middle, and low level for each of these two categories. Then there is the decorous style, which implies that the language conforms to the speaker, the subject matter, and the readers. To put it simply, what this means is that the language is appropriate for the literary genre in which it is written. The social economic class of those using it in the novel in this case, the social, political, and social cultural context in which it is being used, as well as the occasion for which it is being used. Decorum was an actual convention of writing in the 18th century that dictated that the style of a work should match or be consistent with all the aspects of the work. Second is colonizing the African mind. The colonizing forces of Europe were well aware that a control over people's thoughts was necessary for a full grasp of the continent's populace. Only when a slave's mind is subjugated, only when the slave has a slave mindset, can the slave remain a slave indefinitely. The colonizing nations of Europe introduced their own religion, a set of cultural traditions, their own language, and most importantly, their own educational system into the African regions that they controlled in order to accomplish this goal. Christianity superseded the Africans' traditional religion practices, which were often referred to as animism and derided by Europeans as primitive inferior religions incapable of preserving people's souls. All rites, social practices, and numerous ceremonies were categorized as savage, and the majority of these were forbidden. By denouncing it as inhuman, the polygamy practice, that is, practices of having more than one legal wife, that is widespread among Africans, was outlawed. Similar to this, girls' circumcision, which served as sort of initiation ceremony for them when they entered puberty, was denounced as barbaric and outlawed Looking back, this was a smart decision because it prevented the unnecessary risking of many lives by mutilating female genitalia. Some societies have outlawed or severely restricted the performance of certain dances and song genres because they are considered vulgar and uncultured. Third world novels. The phrase third world refers to all of the countries that were and are still considered to be economically undeveloped. In the 20th century, the phrase first appeared during the Cold War to describe countries outside of the First and Second Worlds. It was applied to emerging or undeveloped nations, particularly in Latin Africa, America, Oceania, and Asia. Third estate, the French commoners who restricted the clergy and nobility who made up the first estate and the second estate during the French Revolution, is another example of how the term third world is used. At the Bandung conference in 1955, you should remember these dates. These are very important dates. Okay. The phrase third world officially entered the political lexicon for the first time. Wait one second. Okay. First time, the third world is culturally and economically diverse, and it includes oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, as well as developing industrial nations like India, China, Malaysia, Philippines, Brazil, Mexico, as well as impoverished nations like Haiti, Chad, Afghanistan. Third world literature is a term used to describe the writing that has come out of these nations. However, the term third world is no longer considered particularly politically correct, hence a more inclusive term like literature from the margins is used to describe these writings. If the writings are from former colonies, the word utilized may also refer to new literatures or even post-colonial literatures. Some excellent examples of third world authors and works include Sembian Osman's God's Bit of Wood, Chinau Acheb's Things Fall Apart, which we will be studying, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Petals of Blood, Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children, Salman Zadie's World at Point Zero, Earl Lewis' The Wine of Astonishment, Mario. Edna Pontellier. Edna, who is unhappy in her marriage, also wants to be independent. She aspires most of all to be a unique person, not just a title like wife or mother. She actually disputes the idea that all mothers possess maternal instincts. The author compares Miss Pontellier to Adele Ratignolle, another mother in the novel, to provide a helpful depiction of Miss Pontellier as a woman and a mother in this chapter. The kids hardly even ran into Edna's arms to be consoled if they fell during play because she was not a mother woman. Instead, they would gather themselves and move on. Mr. Pontellier regretted the fact that he felt, rather than precised, that his wife had neglected her responsibilities to the kids. The mother woman of which Grand Astley that summer had a large number are described as follows. Miss Pontellier was not a mother woman. To put it briefly, that summer in Grand Astley, the mother woman appeared to be in charge. When any harm, real or imagined, threatened their priceless young, they would flutter about with extended protective wings. They were ladies who revered their husbands, adored their children, and considered it a sacred privilege to lose their distinct identities and develop the wings of ministering angels. Section B, answer the following in about 350 words each. Okay. First question is, examine the awakening using symbolism as a mode of inquiry. You should write about 350 words. See how long it is. Okay, the main goal of the psychoanalytical approach is to highlight the symbolism and symbols in the book, The Awakening. Symbols represent or imply something else, something bigger or more complex, usually an idea or a collection of interconnected notions, attitudes, or behaviors. Symbols are recognized as things, characters, figures, or colors that are used to symbolize intangible thoughts or concepts. When I consider the awakening, I may think of a number of symbolism. These might have catched your attention as well, but you might not have recognized them or interpreted them as symbols. You might have also already identified them as symbols and conducted an analysis of them. Let me start, though, by discussing the novel's use of birds as a symbol. In this book, birds have a symbolic meaning. The birds that have been addressed, described, and any bird imaginary created constitute interment image in the awakening. The confined birds represent Edna Pontellier's personal confinement inside the boundaries of her marriage and offspring. Given that we are awake of women's status in the Victorian era, it may also be a sign of the trapping of all women or of women in general. The mocking bird and Madame Lebrun's parrot may also be interpreted to also represent Edna Pontellier and Madame Reyes. The movements of both birds are constrained by their imprisonment, just as the movements of the woman in the story are constrained by the rules and traditions established by society, particularly a restrictive one. They are sometimes unable to even communicate with the environment around them because to their extreme movement restrictions. For instance, Edna Pontellier is unable to express her deepest suffering, not even to her husband, or for that matter to herself, to any other character in the book. She makes an effort to break free of society's constraints as well as the domesticity of her husband and her kids. We as readers are aware that the pigeon house is actually just 2 steps away and really indicative of her own innate inability to completely remove herself from her former life. She established a place entirely for herself away from her husband and her children, the pigeon house, and finds solace in the fact that her new home is symbolic of her independence. As was already established, the awakening is immensely symbolic. Thus, it is now up to you to hunt for symbols throughout the book. We have already described what symbolism is and provided examples of its use. We anticipate that as you read the book, you will search for other symbols. We will still point out a few significant symbols to you for your work, but we expect you to research the symbolism of them. Consider how Edna Pontellier and the other women in the book are depicted. To us, the readers in the book, the mob women seem to prevail there that summer at Grand Ashley. It was easy to know them fluttering about with extended wings when any harm, real or imaginary, threatened their prison brood. They were women who idolized their children, worshipped their husbands, and esteemed it a holy privilege to efface themselves as individuals and grow wings as ministering angels. Discuss Paraja as a text that deals with the economic light of tribals. The book Paraja provides anthropological information regarding poverty, particularly among the Sarsupadar tribal people in the Korapat district of Odisha. The hamlet is described as having the thatched huts, patches of green sown with maize, chilies or tobacco, and mandya, alsi, and kandula. Staple food of these tribes On the first page of the story, the description gives a clear picture of the poor living conditions of the Paraja people. A single room divided into compartments with few accessories, containers made of leaves, clothing hung on the walls, consisting only of cotton saris for girls and loin clothes for men. Dried bottle gourds used to transport mandia gruel to the fields, and umbrellas made of dried palm leaves. They make a living for laboring on their own tiny patches of green or providing labor or goddess to others. Mainly many lenders. Mainly money lenders. They neither have excessive appetites nor lofty aspirations. They are essentially devout individuals who workshop natural gods and goddesses. They firmly believe in the abilities they possess. Women wash, bath, and transport water to their dwellings from the stream. They typically wear saris and bead necklaces, bangles, and other accessories. Thus, unfortunate men and women who survived on shipwrecked mango stones and covered their nakedness in scraps of cloth, gathered together under the deluge of suffering raining down on their heads, and wept in this realm of hills and forest in an uncharted region of the vast earth. Thus, it is clear that these Parajas' lives are terrible at every turn due to poverty, deplorable economic circumstances, and the lack of knowledge and understanding of legal issues. After carefully reading the story, we have the idea that we must empower the Parajas, reduce their poverty, and offer them access to education, better health care, and more work prospects. This would progressively weaken the feudal system, and we might be able to persuade the populace to adopt a different mindset as a result. What do you think? Does a literary text lose in the process of literary translation with reference to Paraja? Let's see. Translation is essential for the fostering understanding among speakers of different languages in India's multilingual society. According to the answer, an audio text will be limited to the boundaries of Odisha unless it is translated into other language. A text written in a regional tongue can reach people and locations outside of our country if it is translated into a language like English. Here, the fact that Tagore's Gitanjali was originally written in Bengali is an important illustration, but when translated into English, it found a large audience all over the world. You must have come across some of the translations into English from various regional language or Bhasha language like Odia, Kannada, Bengali, Marathi, Assamese, Tamil, Malayali, Hindi, etc. On examining some of the translations from the regional Bhasha language, you will realize the resistance of the original text and the responsibility involved in the act of translation. You can also observe how a literary text belongs to the whole of humanity while the belonging at the same time to a certain people, culture, language. To fully comprehend the translated text at hand, locate a novel written in an Indian language that has been translated into English. Godin by Primchand might be a possibility. We will look at the cultural setting of Paraja in the following part. No translation is perfect or full in the sense that all the source text intentions cannot be transferred to the text in the target language, and it is more so with a novel like Paraja that makes use of the tribal language in a text written in a regional language alone. With colloquialisms and Mahanti's use of deep, dense, poetic language makes deep, dense, poetic language makes it even more difficult In translating this novel, one of the toughest tasks lies in retaining the distinction between the varieties of language used for effect quite in keeping with the characters and their background. That apart some other dimensions like the musicality of the songs, the deep poetic language, the turn of phrases peculiar to a people too pose problems for purposes of translation. With that realization and understanding, the translator aptly remarks, no translation can hope to capture the varied riches of Gopinath Mahanti's Odia prose, vigorously colloquial and forthright at one moment and sublimely effortless, said and lyrical at the next. This English translation may, like every great literary translation, only be able to convey some of the flavor of the original work to a larger audience. The author's goals have been realized that insofar as the book reads like an English novel, it is possible that some of the novels analysis and commercially potential have been lost in the translation process. The story have been told, the lesson and significance have been conveyed, and efforts have been taken to preserve every aspect of the original in the English translation. Yet it is still true that the original narratives accomplish these goals with even greater force and potency. Fourth question is critically analyze the consequences of the white man's arrival in Ethiopia in achieves things fall apart. Economically, Ethiopia was also affected by the arrival of white team. Hitherto, Ethiopia and presented as a hierarchical society were men who showed to be brave, hard workers and strongly enough occupied the highest place in society, while lazy and unmanly men were found at the bottom of the pyramid. Since the missionaries arrived, things turned around. The lazy and humble man who decided to accept and workshop the new god began to get richer and richer. While the hard worker farmers were left behind, money began circulating in the tribe, but only those who turned into Christianity. Christianity had it. Hence, no one interested in trading, and so farmers were getting poorer every day. We may say that Ethiopia was not destroyed economically, but it was greatly affected. Some suffered a lot of it, but some others were benefited by these changes. The arrival of the white men also led to massive changes in the village politics. They subjected the villagers to their own judicial system and rules, imposing an extremely difficult and harsh government over them. As white men did not respect nor understand the clan's customs, many men were punished for following their uncivilized tradition. In chapter 21, Okonkwo discusses with Abirika about Anito, who was recently hanged by the government after he killed a man with whom he had a dispute. Clearly, the new ruling system did not take into account old customs. It is completely correct actually to punish a murderer or any kind of criminal, but by doing so, we are destroying their customs and their traditions. When Enoch unmasked an Ignou, considered to be the highest position crime in Ethiopia, the crunch did nothing, as again they did not respect their customs. Unmasking an Agwia in Ethiopia is an much or even more harsh than killing a man is for the white man. It can also be compared with killing a god. Once again, the new government did not punish this event. This is a great example of how Ethiopia was left weak and subjected to the white man ruling. We can see now that they are not trying to make Ethiopia a more civilized village but a more British one. Hence, we may conclude that by imposing a new government who ignores their customs, the coming of the white men are making Ethiopia fall apart. Finally, culturing Ethiopia also fell apart thanks to the arrival of the white man. The newcomers introduced a school which taught their own rules, their beliefs, and their culture. They educated younger villagers that way so that they could later control them more easily. They were kind of brainwashed to believe and trust whatever they do. Education is not bad, of course, but they were not educating them to be better and more intelligent villagers. They were educating them to be other persons. They changed their minds. Young boys were dragged out of farmers into the school. In other words, they were dragged out of their lives from whom they really are. Another cultural change imposed by the white men were hospitals. We can't say that's something bad, but that is not how Umufia is. Okay, that's all for the day. Thank you.